Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. In this video, I'm going to begin the disassembly and kind of tuning and prep of this car. Before I drive it for the first time, I want to take apart the shocks. I want to make sure they've got fluid. Regardless of whether they have fluid or not, I'm going to empty whatever's in there and I'm going to put in my own fluid in weights of my choice. I may switch these springs for other springs. There are a handful of other things as well. For example, I want to rebuild the differentials and I want to use proper diff fluid in them. When this was assembled, this receiver combination ESC was mounted incorrectly, or I hope that isn't the way they all are. It's kind of up on the edge here, which makes the body sit sideways because this is higher than it should be. So I'm gonna deal with that issue, but I also am gonna be, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna do it in this first series. I may just do prep. In other words, you know, adjusting the suspension correctly, because this thing has a tremendous amount of toe out, like in the realm of like 15 degrees. I want to take the diffs apart and do fluid, as I mentioned, and shocks, and then just do some general tuning. Now, eventually, I'm going to take out this ESC and this motor. I have a, let me just grab it. I have a new motor ESC combo, and those are, it's just a brush setup. It's a very inexpensive upgrade. It's a just a very, it's like a Kai RC, I think is the name, KYRC. It's a just a brushed ESC and a brushed motor. Basically about the same size motor. Hopefully it's a little faster. This is a 12 turn, so it should be a pretty hot motor. So I will put, you know, this motor will go here in place of this one. It's the same size. This ESC will go right here. And then I have a receiver, which will probably mount up on here, or maybe back here, depending. What that's going to do is allow me to use a high performance radio, or a higher feature radio. The stock radios that come with these don't give you endpoint adjustment. They don't give you proportional or exponential adjustments, so that you can limit how much influence you get over the steering during the initial part of the stick movement, and then as you move further towards the end point of the stick, you get progressively more of a deviation change. What that does is it makes it less twitchy, easier to handle, especially at high speeds, and you know, endpoint adjustments, all those different features that aren't in like anti-lock brakes, ABS. Modulates the brake for you, so you can apply brake, and you can also adjust that brake settings a lot more in a more granular way. There's just a lot of advantages to a slightly better radio than the stock radios that come with these, and that's to be expected. I mean, I'm not faulting the manufacturer. For $110 for them to provide you with this kit built with a transmitter and receiver, speed controller, motor, tires, all metal shock absorbers, actual turnbuckles, not just solid plastic, you know, connecting rods that you can't adjust, things like that. It's even got bearings in it. I mean, this is a really nice kit for $100, but you know, since it's only $110, they had to take shortcuts. They had to skimp on things, and that's, you know, totally to be expected and reasonable. I think that they've given a tremendous deal for this price. This car is really nice. I think it's a lot better than the 14401 or 001 because it's basically the same car. It just has a longer wheelbase. That seems to be the only difference between these vehicles. There may be other subtle differences, but that's the primary difference. And that longer wheelbase makes for a much better handling vehicle. It's going to jump better. It's going to have a lot more high-speed stability. No matter what you want to do with it, it's going to benefit from that longer wheelbase. So I'm really like that. The fact that it's got these little pills back here, that's going to give you, should give us at least 2 settings, depending on how it's done. If the hole is in the center, then there's no adjustment. But I'll bet when I take this apart, we're going to find that this little pill here, these little black pieces, have a hole to one side, which means that you can flip it and get either more toe out or less for the rear. In the front of this suspension arm, there are also these little pills, but they appear to point up and down, not left and right, which means that they may be adjustable up and down, and that's going to give you roll center adjustment. I mean, this, you know, there's 3 holes here for adjustment. There's 2 holes here. So you've got a decent amount of adjustment for the camber link. Multiple shock positions, low and high. There's an item here that isn't included, but it's gonna be one of the first things I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna thread a screw into this hole right here on the swing arm, and you can see that it's even got a location for a sway bar, and it's got the holder back here for a sway bar. You can see the hole on either side where this bracket can be removed and a sway bar can be put in place. It's got the same thing in the front. So this is a very, very advanced car in a lot of ways. That hole that I mentioned that I'm going to put a screw into, that is a stop for this little aluminum tab here, and that's going to allow for a height adjustment, the max that these arms can extend on either side. Another adjustment that you would not normally find in a car at this price range, not even close, and we've got them in the front and the rear. We've also got these little pills in the front and rear, so we're going to be able to make, hopefully, if I'm correct about those, and we'll find out shortly, we're going to have a lot of adjustability as to how we can tune and adjust this car. So if you're new to RC and you want to get started, for $110, $120, depending on which package you get a full running car with a lipo. Some of them come with multiple lipos, like the $120 or $130 version of this comes with either 2 or 3 lipos, which I highly recommend because it's so nice to be able to run through a couple of packs before having to start recharging batteries again, especially if you've got to go home to redo your charging. You know, that's a lot more fun than going out and getting one 10-minute run and then having to go home and wait for a battery to charge. As a first car, this would give you a tremendous amount of experience, especially if you take the time to do the rebuild that I'm going to show you how to do. To make sure that your diffs are prepped, that your shocks are prepped, and that you've done some basic suspension tuning. That's going to really give you a head start, and then you can start tinkering with your camber link locations, toe, caster, camber. You're not going to be able to adjust caster on this, but you are going to be able to make adjustments to roll center, and you might have some kick adjustment here. A lot of things that you're going to be able to kind of change and see how it affects the car, and that is going to teach you the basics of car handling, car tuning, and that's very important that you start learning those things, because that's going to make for a better long-term experience. Now, we've got some little plastic things on here I forgot to peel off. They're just little wheel covers. Go ahead and pull these off. There's no real purpose to them. It's just something that they put on to protect the wheels during shipping. So, yeah, if you wanted to leave them on until they get good and dirty, you can do that, or, you know, whatever you want to do. I'm getting rid of them. I don't see any reason to have them on. So, and I also forgot to check to see if the body had a, if they left a plastic cover on here, which they did. This is going to make the body look a lot nicer when you peel this off. This is for paint purposes, and since it is already painted, you don't need it. And look at how much nicer the body looks, this versus this. You see that? It's just, now we got a really pretty looking body there. It's a lot shinier. And if you're new to RC, bodies come with a paint shield on the outside of the body. You paint these clear bodies from the inside, not the outside, and that way you can't scratch the paint, and B, you have that shiny clear plastic surface making your paint pop. So just gonna leave these in here. But I think this is just a fantastic entry-level car because of all these different adjustabilities and because of everything that they give you. Also, you can order replacements for many of the parts. Now, I ordered a few things ahead of time just to have them in the case it crashes. This is a set of front or rear control arms. It's the arms that are down here, and these can get broken, and likewise these pieces here. Now, they also make a lot of these pieces in anodized aluminum. I do not recommend doing that. You do not want to add unnecessary weight to this vehicle. You really don't. All that's going to do is slow it down. It might look neat, but you're wasting money. You'd be better off putting that money into a good battery charger, something that can charge 2 batteries at a time and has a storage mode so that you can discharge your batteries to the correct voltage so that they're nice and safe. If you don't drive the car for a few weeks or even a few months, those batteries aren't going to blow up on you. They're not going to start swelling. And they're not just going to go dead on you. It makes your batteries last a lot longer if you, every time you use them, when you're done, you run them in storage mode. It takes them down to 3.4 volts per cell, and that's the safe level where the battery can, it's kind of like a neutral voltage where the battery can stay for long periods of time without degrading. Oh, and by the way, a pair of these arms is less than $4. When you buy this vehicle, if you can afford to throw an extra $20 at spare parts, do it. Get a couple of these. Get a set of metal diff gears. Now, one of the problems with the earlier versions of these cars was that they used plastic gears. I don't know if they have upgraded these to metal gears. We'll find out when we open them up. If I open them up and there's plastic in there, I'm immediately going to swap to these metal gears. If there's metal in there, that's great. I've got spares. Again, very inexpensive. I think this pack of gears was under $8. Also, there is a pair of gears here and here, one on the motor, one on the drive shaft. The old version used to come with a plastic gear on the drive shaft. This is a pair of metal gears, a metal drive gear for the motor and a metal gear for the drive shaft. So again, very inexpensive. If, you know, again, I haven't opened this kit up. I went ahead and I bought a few things that I thought would be good upgrades to have in the event of problems. So I'm gonna see about replacing those, and that's it. That's all the extra stuff I got, other than some extra batteries. when I bought this, I bought it for 110. It didn't come with the extra Lipos. I already had some in the right size. These are 1550C batteries, 2S batteries. I got them on Amazon for like $20–25 for a pair. They're very inexpensive. So you could conceivably, pick up, 4 batteries plus the one that comes with it. And if you've got a charger that you can use out in the field, you can just run all darn day with these things. Make sure you let your batteries cool down between runs. That's why it's better to have more than less. Just common sense. Check out my video on, I'll put a link in the description on batteries going bad, what to do, what not to do, safety. These things can actually explode, and they don't explode as much like a bomb as they do an incendiary device. Very hot fire. Earlier this summer, someone burnt down their family home about 7–8 miles from me, and they had left a car battery, a Lipo charging in the garage, and it went into thermal overload, and it was like $1.1 million in damage. A big home and everything in it went up in smoke, all because of a battery being charged unattended. And if someone had just been there to hit it with a fire extinguisher, things would have been over. If the person hadn't been abusing their batteries, it wouldn't have happened. There's no way that happens without you mistreating your batteries in one fashion or another. You're either charging them, running them down, charging them up immediately while they're all hot, and overheating the battery, or you've neglected it. You've let it start swelling because you charge it and leave it charged, fully charged, for days or even weeks on end, and the battery starts puffing. Once these batteries start puffing up, they're not safe. Throw them away. So anyway, check out that video. That'll basically tell you everything you need to know about maintaining your batteries and not having some horrible incident occur. So let's get started into taking this car apart. I'm going to put these away. Those will come in the next video, or a couple of videos down the road. It depends on how many videos it takes to do this process. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the mount for the wing, and that way the wing will come off with it. And as I mentioned in the earlier video to this, I want to eventually replace a lot of this hardware with better quality hardware. These are coarse thread. Let me just give you an example. Okay, this is the kind of hardware that's being used on this kit. This is the kind of hardware I would like to see used on this kit. This kind of hardware with these very coarse threads strips a lot easier. It's sharper. It cuts the plastic in a harsher way. It's not going to hold as well or as long. This kind of hardware works a lot better. Now, these diff cases, the plastic diff cases, are available for, again, like $6 or $7. I ordered an extra pair of those, and down the road during one of my disassemblies and reassemblies, I'm going to take those these existing diff cases and throw them away, and I'm going to take the new diff cases and I'm going to use good hardware. Now these look like they would be M2s, not M3s like this piece of hardware, but M2s are easy to come by. You can get steel boxes of steel M2 hardware in various sizes very inexpensively. So, just options, things you might try if you're trying to really extend the life of your car. If you're bashing them hard and, you know, jumping them in on asphalt and smashing them up. You probably won't last long enough to get to that point. But, you know, if you're racing on dirt and just having a good time with it, you may not get to that stage. So I'm just grabbing a parts tray here. You can basically go on Amazon and buy boxes of hardware like M3s, M2s, M4s, etc. in various lengths. You know, they'll have, you know, like a sectioned box with, you know, compartments with a bunch of bolts in each size and various lengths, washers, nuts and bolts, and that would give you the hardware you would need. Now, bearing in mind that it's only a $100 car, you know, how much time and money you want to spend is up to you also. So now that we're here, let's go ahead and pull this battery and get that out of our way. And set that aside. Might as well pull this since I'm going to be taking this car almost completely apart right away. Let's see. There we go. In case you're curious as to where I'm pulling these wrenches from, this is a really nice tool rack. They cost about $30. They come disassembled. You just screw it together, and as you can see, it holds a wide variety of tools. Makes it very easy to get your stuff. The only complaint I have about this so far is that everything is Phillips head, and I'm not a big fan. I would rather have hex tools, Allen wrenches, or Allen head bolts, however you want to describe it. And I should have a little assembly stand here. That would make this a lot easier. Sorry, I'm not totally prepared. I've been redoing my work area, my car work area, that is. I bought a new desk, new table, and some drawers to store stuff, and making things a lot easier, but I gotta find everything now. Now, good old car stands are great, but I find these to be really helpful. It's basically, it's a yoga block, and it's just a hard foam block, and I use these for my larger cars to put them on shelves. That way the car isn't sitting on its tires, flat spotting the tires. So I can just stick this on a shelf and, you know, have my like 1/8 scale in my short course truck and stuff. That way I'm not buying a whole bunch of car stands at $15 a piece when these are like $3 or $4 if you buy them in packs of 4 or more. Having the right tip of Phillips head is extremely important. As you can see, I have 2 here. These are both Tamiya screwdrivers. And if you don't have the right size for the particular screws you're working with, you're going to strip stuff out. And that is not good. It's also frustrating to work with tools that are the wrong size. Okay, I'm going to start by just checking out one of these shocks and seeing what we've got in here. That wasn't very tight. Looks like there is a plastic piece and there's at least one O-ring. Okay, let's have a look inside here. I'll take off this preload adjuster. Surprisingly, there's even a wrench fitting here. They don't have a, it's not on 6 sides, but you've got 2 sides upon which you can hold this with a wrench. I've also got flat surfaces there on the cap. Let me get a towel out here in case this does have oil in it. And we have a bladder, and there is oil. What do you know about that? I'm extra impressed, and they even give us bladders. Personally, I prefer emulsion builds, but I've used bladders before and I don't really have a problem with it. As I mentioned, I do want to go ahead and build these up with my own choice in shock fluid weight. So, just capping that off for the moment. But I am going to be taking all of these apart and we'll see how many seals they have. How many O-rings there are, 1 or 2. I would imagine there's probably only 1. They don't, do they or don't they? These adjusters move very freely. Usually these preload adjusters have a groove with an O-ring, and as you can see, there is a black O-ring right inside there. There is a groove. This is a good pair of shocks, and it's got a decent amount of damping in it. It's got a lot of rebound built into it. As you can see, it extends backwards. I usually like my shocks to be neutral, but again, just personal preference kind of thing. Not terribly stiff. I've got a variety of springs. I should be able to have some spring options for this. I think it's a little heavily sprung, but a lot of bashers and ready to run cars tend to be oversprung because they assume that you're going to be, jumping this car 10 feet off the ground and doing crazy stuff with it and basically beating it to death. And so they try to give enough spring that it's not just going to be chassis slapping the ground all the time. See, now this one's got even more rebound than the other. So this is one reason to rebuild these yourself, is to get, see, this one has a lot less rebound. It's not as stiff. You can't really see it. I can really feel it though. Like this one is just got a ton. So you want to equalize your shocks. You want the shocks to all be the same or as close as possible to being the same. So these springs don't have any marks on them that I can see. So one would assume that there is the same spring rate front and rear. May want to put something a little stiffer in the rear since we got a big motor back here. Slightly heavier fluid in the rear as well. So I'm not going to rebuild these this very moment. I'm just going to set the shocks and all their associated nuts and bolts aside, and now I'm going to go ahead and take a look at these diffs and see what else we've got going on. So the next step, I want to take off this center rail here in preparation for taking these off, and I want to see what's going on here as far as the motor mount, and that needs a smaller screwdriver. I might as well set this down so that the car isn't right up against the camera. Looks like they used a little Loctite on that. That is a bolt that is going into this metal motor mount here. And they were wise enough to use Loctite on them, little thread locker. Now, when you're going into plastic, you don't need that. But when you're going into metal, you definitely need it. Now, one thing I want to do is kind of keep this stuff segregated. So I'm going to go ahead and put these 4 screws into my body here, so I know those go with the wing. And that way I'll just set the wing inside the body. That way I know those, because those are a different length than those. So it's important to be able to put the right screws in the right place when you put it all back together. And since most of you guys probably have a smartphone, not a bad idea is to take pictures as you go with your cell phone. So you can lay the screws out next to the piece and take a photo of it, and then when you're putting things back together, you can just reference your photos, and that way you can see what went where. Another nice thing about this car is that front and rear are largely the same. Of course, we've got steering at this end and motor at this end, but the diff cases are identical. The suspension arms are identical. We've got different shock towers. We've got different end plates, but there's a lot of similarities. A lot of things are interchangeable. Let me go ahead and just snip that real quick. I'm probably going to swap out that steering servo with something a little stronger. Let me take a look at these. Okay, these are just inspection stickers by whoever did various inspections on the assembly line. Well, that's good. And as you can see, we've got a plastic gear. So it was a good decision for me to order. It was a good decision to order these metal gears. So now I can replace this with a metal gear. It looks like the gear in here is metal already, but this gives me an extra pinion, and I may tinker with different pinion sizes to see what kind of speed or power, depending on which way I want to go. One thing I've considered doing with this car, and I'd love your input, and I'll ask for this again in another video, because this I'm kind of asking way into the video. I have a speed body. It's not quite the right size, but I can make it work with this. I've thought about setting this up with a set of road tires. I have a GPS speed device, so I can see how fast my cars are actually going. And I thought about putting a high-end brush system in here and seeing how fast I can make this chassis go. If that is something you guys would like to see, please comment and let me know. If a lot of people want to see it done, I'll go ahead and do it. It would be a lot of fun. Yeah, see, this should be a little closer in. The way it's mounted, it's hitting the body. They've got a ton of, yeah, see, look at that, the way they put all this extra foam in here to try to jack that up, when they should have just positioned it next to the body there instead of up like that. Someone didn't install this very well. So I'm going to go ahead and peel off this super thick two-sided foam. Yes, wifey. My wife just popped her head in to let me know that it looks like we're going to get 8 to 10 inches of snow in about 2 or 3 days. Now, this area, that means nothing. It could totally change. On the other hand, we could get 8 to 10 inches of snow. So I'm going to make sure I've got my crawler and maybe even this ready to go. So, and that's not a bad setup, but I don't like mixing ESCs and radios. Something I have seen a handful of manufacturers are doing is building ESCs into motors. I'm not really sure I like that either, because I want to be able to, you know, I want to be able to like choose the motor I want, and then, you know, if the ESC burns up, if the motor's overheating, it's going to overheat. I don't know. I'm sure they've tested and tried. I'm sure there's a method to the madness. I'm just not sure that's what I would want. That's a really chintzy little servo, but yeah, it might be decent. I might have to open it up and see if it's got metal gears or not. And I can always drill a couple of different holes here to put in mounting posts for a slightly larger servo. It's got to be a shorty because we got a drive shaft here to worry about. Sorry about that. And check it out. Our steering assembly has ball bearings. They're open shell, but there are bearings there nonetheless. It doesn't look like they're well lubed or anything, so I'm definitely going to grease all that stuff up before I put stuff back together. But the fact that they put ball bearings instead of, they could have just used brass bushings or plastic bushings, and no one would have been the wiser. But that's a really nice option that they've put in there. I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff that you're getting, a lot of bang for the buck for the price. So, okay, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and pull the tires and wheels off and get them out of the way. Almost should have done that first thing, along with the rear wing, because I'm pretty much going to disassemble this thing almost completely. Not completely, but a long way down. Let's check out these hexes. Okay, they are metal, but they're not split. In other words, we don't have a, they're not a clamping type. But I've got some better hexes. I could upgrade these if I want to. But again, we have bearings. They're not big bearings, but they're bearings nonetheless. We got front and rear bearings. So, you know, again, just more really nice stuff for the money. When I was a kid, I built my first radio control car out of airplane wheels and spruce and brass parts. I even had to make my own steering knuckles and stuff out of chunks of nylon and 440 hardware. But I built a little radio control car. Now, someone really used a lot of thread locker on this. They really didn't need to because it's a lock nut, but whatever. And these are standard 12mm hex, so you could put a lot of different wheels and tires on here. For example, you could put a set of road tires on it. Now, these are touring car 1/10 scale tires, even though this is a 112. These are for a a road car that I'm going to be racing this summer, spring. But these would fit right on here. It's not a lot holding the shock tower on, just 2 screws. That's another reason to use better hardware. But check this out. This case splits top and bottom, not front and rear pieces. It looks like I'm going to be able to take off just a couple more bolts and be able to remove this diff. Still need to do those two. Wow. There are high-end professional RC race cars that you can't get to the rear diff this easy. That's really nice. I mean, there's my diff. Boom. And there's a double ball bearing at the diff exit for the pinion gear. And our ring gear and diff have a bearing at either side as well. So, I mean, this is really nice. This is a good car. That isn't the smoothest diff action I'm feeling here. And it's really light. I don't think there's a lot of lube in there. And I don't like this grease. And look at this gear. This gear is dry. There is no grease on here at all, which means there's no grease on here. So that is not good. This is why I'm taking the car apart. If you are buying one of these cars, you want to do what I'm doing. Do not drive it, not even once. Don't even run one battery pack through it before taking it apart and fixing it. Do it right. Don't damage the car, don't damage your gears by not going in right away and doing a rebuild. You'll be so much better off, because the fact that these 2 gears are dry, I mean, I watched several videos on people who have the 144001 kit, which is the same thing except shorter wheelbase. Remember that. This is a new one. They just brought this out. Almost all of them, after they'd run a handful of battery packs through it, they had grinding gears and they had busted diffs. At least one or the other. Now, I'm sure these people were beating the hell out of these little cars, but at the same time, you shouldn't have that kind of damage so quickly. And the only way you get that is when you have things that are dry, when there's no lube. Now, when I rebuild this, I'm going to use quality lube. I'm going to be using this ProTech RC Premier White grease on all the gear surfaces. This is a fantastic lube. I've been using this on several of my kits now that I've built from, up from new parts, and I really like it. It's in my crawler, it's in my 2-wheel drive buggy, it's in my new short course truck, it's in my A-scale Kyosho, and it's fantastic. It is a noise reducing and wear reducing grease. Now, inside the diff, I'm assuming this diff is going to have a half decent seal to it, and I'm going to use proper diff lube in these when I build them up so they're reasonably stiff. I don't want a loose, grindy. I wish I could, there's no way for you to feel this, but you can feel that it's a little, it doesn't feel like there's much in there. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.